Jake, I was noticing as you were scrolling Instagram that your eyes dilated immensely on one particular video. I have reached out to the editor on that video. He wants to break it down with you. He is going to blow your mind.
Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Today's video is extra cool. Instead of just me breaking it down, I actually reached out to the person who edited the video and said, hey, would you want to come in and chat, pull back the curtain and actually tell us about stuff instead of just whatever
Jake thinks happened?
So today, we have none other than the content ninja himself, Jon Simo. Jon, thanks for joining today. Super excited to have you.
Yeah, Jake, thanks for having me, man. I'm super excited to talk editing. I've been editing for a very long time. So yeah, let's get right into it.
Love that you love editing. As soon as you told me that, I was just pumped. I want to break down your latest, I think it was the BMW i5. Was that the car? But before we do that, I want to kind of get us some warm-up questions, get us into the flow. The people, the Jake Felzine family, also probably want to know some of these. First warm-up question, what is your current editing weapon of choice, software-wise?
That would be the Adobe Premiere Beta.
You said you've been editing for a while. How long?
Yeah, so I started editing actually in an analog format. I started editing when I was 8 years old. I would record something on a VHS camcorder and use 2 VCRs to record from one deck to the next to make cuts.
Music first or music last?
I've always been a music first person, and that's because music is so important to me. I do acknowledge that music can inherently affect the way you cut, but because I have a song selected so far in advance, I'm basically assembling the cut as I'm even shooting the project.
You're sitting down, you're going to get into flow state. What's your go-to editing snack of choice?
I'll probably make myself like a superfood smoothie.
I did that today. Alrighty, those were all great answers. So now I think I want to actually get into the video itself.
All right, let's check it out.
That loop and that wipe at the end, perfect.
Thanks, man.
So good. Biggest thing that I want to start with that I loved about this and that I have always loved about your style is you shoot and edit. From my end, as someone who traditionally gets stuff dumped on me and then I cut it up and I make all of the magic happen in post, like I'm really curious for, like, in your brain, how much of it is planned and how much of it comes in the edit?
You know, I've always had a little bit of shame over not planning more. When I was on my series for CBC, like, you can't not plan. You have to have shot lists and storyboards and scripts and everything like that. And I honestly didn't like that experience. I'm a person that really finds a lot of magic in the edit.
Totally. No, and I mean, don't be ashamed, because I think you're like, whatever you're doing is working, right? The back half is like just as important, or if not more important than the actual filming is. I mean, that seems to be kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's why it's been so challenging to find an editor to work with.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to basically just like matrix plug into my brain and share what I'm thinking with somebody. A lot of the project, I actually don't know exactly how I want it until I can get in there and tinker. I've always been that kid that likes to take stuff apart, but I couldn't tell you how to take apart a clock. I just have to do it myself, right? And then I have to put it back together.
I was literally going to ask you, like, do you think you could work with an editor with that style? Okay, I want to talk about some specific shots here. The first one that I really wanted to ask about, and it's all throughout it, is I'm assuming you shot slow shutter speed. That wasn't like a post effect, right? When you have the lights blurring and the way you kind of move the camera, like that was all done completely in camera, or?
Yeah, in my opinion, there's no good way to do the slow shutter technique in post. So this was actually a series of stills in which I can then put into the timeline.
Okay, the next one I got to ask about is obviously the tire rotation shot. Very, very cool. I want to know, again, kind of similar to what we just talked about, how much of that was in camera versus how much did you have to fix in post? Because traditionally, from what I know, you're going to have to do some tracking, you're going to have to do some lock-off stuff to keep it looking like that. But I'm curious, like, did you need much of that, or what happened there?
I had the driver just very slowly crawl the car forward. I shot with my camera on a gimbal in low mode so that I could match the height of the wheel. And I tried my best to keep the hubcap of the wheel in center frame using frame guides, but I shot purposefully very wide and in open gate so that I would have the maximum amount of real estate to be able to fully rotate the frame. I can actually go in and show you the raw clip.
Yeah, let's see what we're looking at here.
Okay, so here you can see the raw clip.
Yep. Oh, okay, so you weren't even spinning in the shot, completely level the whole way.
So that would actually be impossible in my opinion. The motor torque of a gimbal can't spin fast enough, and to have the human error element of trying to match the wheel perfectly, you're always gonna have to play catch up in post and do like weird rotations just to catch up. It's better to just have it be perfectly static and fully control the rotation. And I didn't do it in After Effects, I actually did it quite simply. So I just turned on my frame guides here and I put them right to the center of the hubcap. And then I went in basically frame by frame. You can see all my frames here, and I just kept setting the anchor point so that no matter what, at each point, it's staying in the crosshair.
Hilariously enough, I just made a video talking about how to do that with the crosshairs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And I added a bit of a push to make it feel a bit more epic, and then I stop the rotation once it's landed again and it rolls off. The other thing that's incredibly important is to have a high shutter.
Oh, yep, totally. Maybe explain why.
So even at a slow pace like this, the wheel is still going to be blurring if you're shooting at 1/50th of a shutter or 1/48 to match your 24p timeline. And if you get motion blur, then when you're rotating, the wheel's not going to be sharp anymore because it's the thing moving in frame. So you're going to have this weird look of the body of the car being tack sharp, but the wheel's going to be just a blur.
Yep. Perfect. All right, John, the other thing that I really want to see, I saw it on Instagram, you posted breaking down just a sound effects only, which again, when you pull the music out of this piece, it becomes really clear just how insane, like the level of detail that you put into that sound design. Could you show us the sound design pass and then maybe just talk through some of your thought process on, what were the choices there?
To preface this, sound design might be one of my favorite things in all of editing.
Sweet.
It's just pure creativity. It can be incredibly hard just to type out what you think the sound sounds like that you have in your brain, right? Like, what does a headlight sound like? What does a wheel spinning sound like, right? And that can be incredibly fun. In reality, like an electric car doesn't sound interesting. It just sort of sounds like a very quiet sewing machine. So it's like, how do you make that feel more alive using electricity and buildups and things like that? So yeah, let me just mute the audio here. And I'll play you guys the sound design pass.
There's a lot going on there.
Something that's important to me is that the piece itself could live without the music. That's why there should never be any points where there is no sound design. I mean, even ambience is sound design. If you see your audio waveform dip to nothing, then you fail, in my opinion.
Yep.
For more traditional automotive stuff, I'll try to capture as much as I can to be authentic to the sound of the car. So you don't want to use the sound of a Mustang in a Porsche commercial, right? Like, the general audience might not know, but Porsche will know.
How often do you find yourself pitch correcting, throwing on different effects? Like, are you reusing the same sound effect but tweaking it too sometimes?
I think every single sound has been modulated in some way on this project.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of like reverb and echo and pitch shifting, speed ramping, and things like that. Whenever I'm done doing sound design, I always export the sound only. I airdrop it to my phone and I'd be like, okay, what can I actually hear as like a general user?
No, and it's so cool that you mentioned doing that. And I even sometimes find myself like just editing with my Apple headphones like plugged in because, you see everyone with like the huge speakers in their setup and it's like people are just watching on their phones. People are just using their headphones.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I want to touch on real quick is how do I get things to look so good for social? I get so many comments saying like, how does your video look so sharp? what are the best export settings, and there's so much misinformation out there that I wanted to just set the record straight for exactly what I do.
Okay, yeah.
First of all, I make sure to slightly over sharpen my video at the very final step.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
That's why I have this adjustment layer here that says final sharpen.
Interesting. Okay.
So what's
Like
happening?
how much? Like how much are you sharpening it?
Usually 20 to 30 points. It actually like doesn't look the best on my screen. You can start to see a lot of jagged edges.
Yeah.
But what happens is that you're effectively bypassing compression. When you're putting something to Instagram servers, no matter how hard you try, it's gonna be compressing it. You're gonna lose a lot of that sharpness, and that's where people's videos become muddy and full of artifacts, and it just like all blurs together.
It'll just go back to kind of where you started. That is so, dude, guys, we're getting the tips here. This is so wicked.
And this is something I basically stole from myself from my photography work. It's like, how do I get like crispy photos? It's over sharpened. Now you got to be subtle with it. There is a fine line and you can't go too far.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, which I'm super proud of, is a lot of times I notice that gradients, they end up getting blocky and you get the banding, right? So this is a hack that I learned many years ago in After Effects, and that's to add a super tiny amount of noise.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense because it breaks it up, right? It makes it less gradient, kind of.
Exactly.
In theory. Yeah. Okay. Okay, everyone. Now your shorts can't not look amazing. All right, guys. Well, this has been fantastic. This has been just so much fun to sit down with Jon and break this down. Jon, thank you so much for coming. I think we could go for hours. Would love to maybe have you back again.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to be here. I get a lot of editor nerd vibes from you, and that's because I am a fellow editor nerd. And so I'm happy to talk about this type of work at any time. I really do love it. So happy to chat about timelines, sequences, story, like you name it. I'm back anytime.
I will definitely take you up on that. Guys, leave some comments down below. Show Jon some love. Jon, where can we find you on the internet? Make sure to kind of give those socials so people know where to find you.
Yeah, so people can find me on the internet. Obviously, it's just my name, @Jon Simo on all platforms. Come say hey.
And with that, let's wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks, Jon.